With me, the one and only Daniel King. Happy to have you here.
Hi there.
Daniel, you are definitely also one of the super or master coaches, as I like to call them. You've been training students for a long time. You've been writing books. You've been doing Fritz trainers, all of the above. Where does your passion for teaching or your coaching come from?
Wow. I don't know. I think I've always coached all ages, all abilities actually. I really enjoy it. Yes, why do I enjoy it? I'm not sure actually. It's fun to see someone improving and making strides, and if I can help them, then that's absolutely great. So no, I've always loved doing it. Even when I was improving, myself, when I was playing regularly, I actually always had students. Always really enjoyed it, and I think being chess is such an now I think I know why. I think chess is such an individual pursuit that actually to work with somebody else, I've always really enjoyed. It's nice to be part of a team, basically.
I like that. When you're teaching your students, what are your methods in particular? Do they differ from the usual teaching stuff, or are you using a lot of books and techniques? Give us a little insight.
So first of all, I don't know what the usual techniques are. I've always gone my own way, and so I don't know what other people do. So all I can say is that for me, the starting point has to be the games of my students. So I will look at their games, and actually very quickly I notice patterns that you can see a player's strengths and weaknesses just by looking at their games, and you see things very quickly. So from that assessment, then I'll look at, okay, what can we focus on? What can we improve? So I have so many examples, exercises that I've built up over the years that I've collected myself, and they could be from books. Very often they're simply from games that I've spotted myself, and then I collect them and put them into themes. So it might be to do with pawn structure, it might be to do with a color complex, it might be exploiting a certain weak square, it might be to do with tactics, it might be to do with attacking, it might be sacrifices, positional sacrifices. So based on how I think my student is doing and their strengths and weaknesses, then I will give them particular exercises to do.
What would be the greatest advice you can give to all chess players for improving their chess skills?
Okay, in a nutshell.
We have time, yeah.
Slow down.
Slow
in
down.
Everything. Slow down.
I love it. Okay.
Because I think there is a tendency these days to to want the answers, like this, to, we have software which is so powerful, and just with the press of a button, we seem to be able to solve all our problems. The problem is that actually this isn't anything to do with deepening one's understanding of a position or chess in general. So actually, I think sitting down and studying a position, trying to understand a position, taking, for example, a game of a very strong player and really trying to understand what's going on with these games, I think is highly beneficial. So I like to look at complete games. So one particular exercise that I like to do is, and I used to do this with a a teammate, I mean, I'm talking years and years ago, we decided to take one game. So we picked a game from a recent tournament by a very strong player. Didn't need to be the top player in the tournament. We just thought, okay, he's an interesting player, and this looks like an interesting game. And this was pre-computer, of course, but the same thing applies now. So we would both annotate the game. We would both analyze the game to the best of our abilities. It could take some time. We'd spend a few days doing this,
Wow.
I mean, we'd write everything down.
Yeah.
And then we would compare our notes. Okay, what did you discover? Now, one could do this these days as well. But there is a tendency, because it's so easy, to just press on the button and it seems like you have all the answers. But actually, looking at these games was really highly beneficial for both of us, because we started to understand, for example, the style of a particular player and what they were really good at, and what you can see where they could have done better. I mean, I'm talking about really top players. I remember looking at a game of Lubojevich's. I'm talking, and another one we did was of Vlastimil Hort. No particular reason we picked these players. They were just interesting games, and they're obviously very strong players. And we started to notice things about their style. So, yeah, this is just one example of just kind of slowing down. I would just tend to push the computers and the engines out of the way and try to really understand something yourself. This takes time, but chess is a complicated game, and it deserves some respect. So these are just some of my methods I use.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get back to engines, because of course this is quite interesting. I get your point of view about this. Now, looking at all the younger players, and as you already mentioned, the time we're living in right now, they are basing most of their training on the engines. Now, your advice is to slow down, and I really understand that, but do you think that people who might slow down will get a disadvantage because the people who study with the engines have this super engine knowledge, study all those lines, get into all the analysis because it is so easy and so quick?
Okay, I think perhaps you're referring to openings, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, one thing I would say is that it depends what level you're playing at, basically. But I would say for most club players, yes, it's good to have an opening repertoire, obviously. But the kind of depth that one needs to go into, compared to a professional, or even let's say 2400 player, it's not necessary. And I think what's actually more important is to have a really good understanding of strategy in a particular opening. And this is something that I've always done, and I think it's still very valuable, to collect kind of model games in a particular opening that show a particular strategy. And that's a kind of blueprint that you can base your play on. And I think, of course, it's valuable to know particular variations, but I wouldn't put the most important. I wouldn't stress this.
Yeah.
It's just as important to understand what you're doing, because so often, I mean, I hear this time and again, that someone will prepare a particular opening with set variations and their opponent varies. And then they go, so what do I do next? Well, if you don't have an idea about strategy, then it's difficult. So it's the combination of these two things that's actually very important. And of course, it depends how much time you have. But ideally, one should have a knowledge of both. And that's why I like complete games. And that's why I collect complete games. If I'm studying an opening, then usually it begins with complete games because I've seen a really interesting strategy. Not because I like this variation that goes to move 17 and you win a pawn. It's about strategy. That's what really appeals to me. And I think that's how we get a deeper understanding.
Talking about players who have just started playing chess, who know how the chess pieces move, and who maybe go to a club now and play their very first tournament or something like that. What would you recommend for them to get better in chess in particular?
Well, again, this is coming back to my overall advice of slowing down, not to play too much blitz, actually.
Okay.
Play slower games.
Okay.
So, the great tendency is just to play, bullet chess or, blitz chess online. It's so easily available. But I always think that improving at chess is a bit like improving at playing a musical instrument.
And so, you know about that too, of course.
A little bit, yeah. So, having piano lessons at the age of 5, from week to week, if I'd been given a piece and said, okay, so practice this one carefully, but if I'd come back and played the same piece at exactly the same speed and making all the same mistakes because I was still playing at 90 miles an hour, then, well, I'm sure my teacher would have said, what's the point? You're making all the same mistakes because you're playing too fast. So obviously with a piece of music, you break it down into chunks, into phrases, so you can play this part, and then you practice that over and over, and you slow it down, and then you speed it up. Well, it's the same in chess. If you're continually playing blitz games and still dropping pieces all the time, what's the point? It's important to slow down first. So I would advise playing slower games, trying to play properly, rather than just making all the same mistakes. I see this a lot.
Okay. And my last question would be, what about the advanced players, the ones who are club players since many years, who are playing in the league, who are beyond 1600 up to 2000 or even more, maybe try to get a title? What advice would you give to them besides the ones you gave already?
I think what I've said already is enough. Actually, I can't think of anything more. I mean,
fair enough.
Yeah, I think the overall motto is slow down, and one can't expect success overnight. I like complete games and studying complete games to get a complete strategy.
Yes, and you can
and that's kind of a starting point for me.
So for you at home, you've seen the Power Play show hopefully already a couple of times yet, because these are often enough complete games from the beginning to the end. And it's very, very entertaining from the beginning to the end. Let me quickly ask you another question which came to mind.
Yeah.
So just want to get this straight. Online chess, also one easy thing, and also, as you already mentioned, often bullet and blitz are the things to go to. In general, if people or if your students play online chess and you give them the advice, maybe try over the board for real or something, do you think in general that, because for me particular, I played a lot of online chess when I was around the rating of 1400, and then I made a big jump to 1800, but I didn't do anything else than playing online, and a lot. So it worked in one direction, but I am also at this level of 1900 and cannot get much further. So can it help in circumstances, or do you hit the wall at one point? As you said already, you see it often that you make the same mistakes all together all the time if you don't train.
Yeah, I think that is a problem. But I also think that online chess is such a different experience and basically such a different game to playing over the board chess. And I know many people who have only played online and then make the switch and then are completely shocked by over the board chess, because it's more intense actually. And when you're playing, a slower game in a club, the games matter more. You have more invested in them. When you're playing online blitz and you can play one game after the other and okay, you drop a piece, next one, then you have less invested in them. Now the great advantage is that you're able to play at any time of day for as long as you like, and there's the ease of it, but the ease of it is also the problem.
Very wise words indeed. I have to quickly mention one tiny anecdote which a friend told me when he went to school, and it's a teacher, the friend of mine, and she saw two kids and they said, we want to play chess, and she said, oh, that's great, like get the board. And they said, what do you mean the board? We just need our phones for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I don't want to dig too right into this. Thank you so much.
They're two different games now. I think this is the point. Yeah,
absolutely. Daniel, thank you so much for doing this, for your great advice. For you at home, you know what to do. It's discount day, and I hope I see you soon again, Daniel. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks. All right, cheers.